Thanks for listening to Richer Soul. This is my first foray into podcasting. My goal is to put out an episode a week. Today's episode's long, as I lay out the big picture. Future episodes will be shorter. I don't have a specific episode length in mind. Rather, I prefer to spend as little or as much time as needed. You can always break up the bigger episodes. With that, let's begin the journey. Welcome to Richer Soul. This is our first episode, and we're going to talk about the journey to financial independence and a life worth living. Forgive me, it's my first time behind the microphone here on my own, and so we will continue to improve, and with your feedback and help, we'll make this a better podcast and improve as we go forward. We live in an age of abundance. I want to shift your perspective a little bit on that. If you have an income of $32,000, you're in the top 1% of the world for income. And if you're like many of my listeners who are earning six figures, you're in the top 0.1% of the world in income. Does that shift your perspective on how abundant your life is and how much you have? So how is it that we have so much abundance and yet we don't feel rich and thrilled with our lives? We should be happy beyond measure with that kind of money. I guess the question is what's missing? And for a lot of people, it's an intentional purpose of where they're going and what they're doing. They seem stuck in a rat race that really isn't what they want, and it's not what defines them, but somehow have become defined by it. And it's not surprising. We live in a consumer society that's bombarded with advertising and messages that are specifically designed to drive you to want to spend more and more and make someone else rich. By constantly putting doubt in our minds and making us think twice, they're able to provide us products that we think are going to make us happier, but that don't. At the end of the day, everyone's being rewarded for getting you to feel like you need more. I know they talk about Henry Ford and how he raised the wages of employees to $5 a day. He didn't raise their wages so that they could be rich. He raised those wages so he could become rich. And while we're on the theme of cars, it's something that we all spend a ton of money on. And let's just look at all the people who are thrilled with you going out and buying a car. One of them is your boss. You come to work and you say, hey, I just bought a new car. He's thrilled. And he's thrilled because he knows you now have a big payment to make. And you're going to work a little harder to make sure that you keep your job, or that you might want to work a little harder to get a raise. The auto manufacturer that made that car, they're thrilled. They got another sale. The salesman who sold you the car, he's thrilled. He's making more money for his family. And his boss at the dealership, he's thrilled too because he's got another sale. And the guy in the finance department, he wants you to take out a loan because that's how the guys in the finance department make money, by you borrowing it. He makes probably more money lending you money on the car than they do on selling you the car. And the worst part is he doesn't even care if you pay it back because he has no skin in the game. They're selling that loan off to someone else. And the person that sold that loan to them, they're thrilled because he just got a commission check. And all the people who are doing the add-ons for the car, they're all thrilled. So on and on it goes for all these people who would push for you to go buy that new car. Now, when you come driving home, your neighbor may or may not be thrilled. It really depends on their perspective. If they've been thinking of buying a new car, well, now they have leverage to say, hey, you got a new car. Well, we need a new car too. And so they fall into that same cycle and trap, and on it goes. Here's the worst part. You drive off the lot, and already your car has lost value. So it's a depreciating asset. And while you love that moment, the reality is 2 years later, there's a better, nicer model of your car. Or maybe somebody else has come out with some new features that are really great. Or maybe one of your friends bought the latest model, or someone that you know, and now you're feeling a little jealous of their new car. In the meantime, your car's got dings and dents, and the kids have spilled stuff all over it. The new car smell is gone, and it's not so great anymore. And yet, you still have years left on those payments. You've got to make that same payment that you made the first day when you were thrilled 2 years later when the joy of making the payment and the thrill of the car is gone. I want you to think of this just as a metaphor for what happens in so many other parts of our life, that push to keep spending to make us happy, and yet it doesn't work. I have to tell you, it doesn't need to be this way. You can step off that hamster wheel. You have my permission. I like to talk about leaping with a parachute. It allows you to jump without the fear of crashing, knowing that you can explore and try something without worry. And we're going to talk a lot about this particular theme of leaping with a parachute throughout our various podcasts that we go on. So when the topic of money comes up, people tend to get really stressed. Their eyes glaze over. The word rich often brings up visions of materialism, excess, and people looking down on people who are rich. And there's some good reasons for this. We live with this weird value system where materialism and being rich is both laughed at and glorified, falsely equate our personal value as a human being to our annual salary, which of course never feels like enough, nor does it seem to grow as fast as costs are going up. Learning how to make and manage money can sometimes be scary and complicated, whether it's budgeting, investing, or negotiating a raise. And the reality is no one's ever talks about this and no one ever teaches it. You go through 12 years of school and they don't have a class on making money. I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics and an MBA. They never talked about making money or how to use money to make yourself happier. And the reality is money is at the core of how we live. It's how we buy the basic necessities that we need for living, like a house and food, and also all the other things that we love that can make our life better. And even though money plays such a critical role in our lives, I think we often feel like we have no control. We spend too much and we let these things drag us down. And if we get into debt, it gets even worse. But the reality is this is something we can control. We can choose to take a different path. I want to also just address something. Being rich, it's not about amassing money for the sake of having money. It's not turning money into a god we idolize and serve that saps us of our compassion and it becomes a drive for just more and more money. Instead, it's about using our money to serve us. Money is nothing more than a tool that allows us to freely make the choices we want. Because being rich isn't really, it's about having financial freedom. It's the freedom to not have to worry about a $3,000 bill when our heating system breaks. It's the freedom to spend time pursuing your dreams and having the financial flexibility to do it. It's the freedom to provide for our children without the worry, nightmares, and fears that come with financial insecurity. It's the freedom to walk away from a job, to be able to say no to a boss who doesn't treat you well, or a job that no longer makes you happy, but it's drudgery. It's the freedom to give, to help others the way you want, to give however you choose to, and to bring value to your family and friends. It's about living life to its fullest. Because when our finances are in order, then we can create the life we want to live and live the life we dream about instead of being stuck. Becoming rich isn't about money. It's about enriching our lives. And that's where I came up with the name for Richer Soul, because it's about the money being used to live a better life. So let's do that. Let's build a more purposeful, meaning life, a happy life. One of financial independence that allows you to live the way you choose, not the way that others want you to live or that the commercials try to get you to live. You're already in the top 1% of the world. So let's make use of that money to serve you as a better tool. So, what does an extraordinary life mean to you? What's your dream? So often we buy lottery tickets and we hope that someone picks our number so we can build the life and purpose we want. Unfortunately, that's leaving it up to chance. And that's not what this is about. It's about being purposeful in your journey, being intentional, and creating the amazing life without someone else deciding for you. So the question is where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core of this is financial well-being, to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. I'm going to confess here. I have to tell you, I feel the same way on Monday morning than I do on Saturday morning. Yeah, I still have a job. I still go to work. The kids still have to get up to go to school. But I have balance. If you hate Monday, it's time to do something to change your life. It is possible. You can make those changes so that Monday is just as exciting as Saturday is. Before we go on, though, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am an immigrant to the United States. I came here when I was 2 years old. My family came to live the American dream. However, I'm not sure that what was the American dream is still the American dream. I think everyone says you have to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a good job, buy a nice big house, a fancy car, and go to work for a company. And when I was younger, people worked for the same company for 45 years. No one does that anymore. It doesn't happen. And buying that fancy house and that fancy car may not bring you the happiness that you thought it would. And that's one of the things I've learned as I've gone through that journey. On top of that, these days with the massive cost of college and the debt that goes with it, a housing market that in many parts of this country have left so many people underwater and without money and trapped in loans, maybe it's time to think of a new dream, a different dream. Maybe that dream isn't the right one anymore. I'm 50 now, and I started out with a very simple dream when I was young. I wanted to be a millionaire so I could have a great life. Part of that, I think, was fear. I grew up, and you'd always see every so often as we would go through an economic cycle that there would be people in their 50s who would lose their job, and they couldn't find another one. They still had teenage kids, and their life literally went into a spiral. And I was just determined to not be that guy. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but once I got to that millionaire status, I found out that money wasn't making me happy. And in many ways, it ties you down. You have to keep doing things to keep up that lifestyle and all the fancy stuff like the fancy car and house. They cost you time and effort in upkeep and demands. And the happiness doesn't go up the longer you have these items. It goes down. So now I focus more on experiences and time with my family, and I figure out how to achieve financial independence so I can say to no to whatever I choose to and say yes to having an enjoyable life. It's not about more stuff. It's about having a bigger purpose and being more content with where you are. Enough about me. Let's get back to you. How about your life? How would you change it if you won the lottery tonight? Take a second and just think about that. I'm going to pause here for a quick second. Do you have some large dreams? Funny thing is, most people who win the lottery are broke, divorced, and unhappy 10 years later. Why? Because the money isn't going to make you happy. You have to be happy to begin with. And that begs the question, so what makes you happy? You might think it's an easy question, but I think many times we're wrong. And that's probably why we dread Monday morning. I've spent quite a bit of time reading, studying, and learning in this area and making changes in my life so that I enjoy my days. I spend a lot of time with my kids. We have great vacations. Every year at Christmas time, we shut down for 2 weeks. Just visit family, take care of all the small stuff we wanted to get done during the year and didn't. And just get ready to start afresh. It's always nice to be able to sit back and relax a little. So let's share some of the things that I've learned. We're going to cover 8 different areas. And they aren't the magic 8. They just happen to be 8 that I came up with. Part of this, though, is about balance. And you have to have balance across multiple areas of your life. Otherwise, you're going to find that one part of your life may drag down all the other parts of your life. Getting back to our car analogy, imagine driving a really fancy, nice car, but it's got a flat tire. No matter how nice or fancy the car is, it's not going to drive correctly with a flat tire. So you too have to keep balance through all these different parts of your life. Over time, we're going to go deep into each of these areas so that we can continue to improve ourselves to live a richer, more purposeful life. All of these areas, though, they weave together and they must work in harmony. The other thing is you have to do things in the proper order at the proper time with the proper tools. So imagine baking a cake and you have all the ingredients, but instead of following the order that you normally would and the recipe for baking the cake, you take the frosting, you line the pan, you crack an egg, and you dump it in. You put some sugar into the pan, and then you bake it. Now you take it out, you add flour and water, and you mix it and serve it. How great do you think that cake is going to be? I don't want to eat that. It doesn't sound very good. So while we had all the right parts to make the cake, we didn't put them together in the right order to make the perfect cake that would be enjoyable. So let's take a look at these parts. Please understand, it's not a hierarchy and it's not in a certain order because, again, they all have to work together. At the beginning, though, you need to have a purpose. What is it that you were born to do? Without that, it becomes so hard to find help and to even know what we want. So imagine I'm going to take you out into the woods and we're going to have target practice. You get to choose your weapon. We'll have experts on hand to teach you how to use the weapon that you chose and help you to practice to hit the target. With a little bit of time and a little bit of practice, I think anyone could get pretty good at hitting the target. We may not hit the bullseye, but worst case, whatever you're shooting with or throwing or firing, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to at least go in the direction of the target. Now, imagine instead we blindfold you. We spin you around 10 times. We move the target. And by move the target, I don't just mean the distance and the location, but I'm going to put it 25 feet up in the air on a tree on the opposite side that you were shooting. Now, after we spin you around and I hand you your weapon of choice and you're still blindfolded, what do you think the chances of you even getting in the right direction or close to that target are? I would say it's pretty bad. Many times I get people who call me up and they ask me questions about IRAs and 401ks and all these financial instruments and what should I do with my money? And I ask about their goals and plans and what their purpose is. And the invariable answer is they don't know what their target is. So how are we going to figure out how to hit that target if you don't define it? If I don't know where you're going? At this point, the reality is we're playing the lottery of life. We're hoping somebody picks us and life is okay. The reality of that is it's probably misery, and it might be why you're stuck where you are today, even though you have so much abundance. So step one is really to figure out what you want and where you're going. The simplest way I have that I ask people to do this is just go buy one of those Mega Million lottery tickets and imagine what your life would look like if you won. And buy the ticket because it gives you something physical. There's a lot of psychological stuff behind that. But get the ticket, sit down if you've got family, and start talking about it. What's your purpose? How are you going to give back? Where do you live? What do you do for enjoyment? Are you sitting on a tropical island drinking all day? I'm going to tell you, it gets very boring after about a year or so. It's nice to relax for a while and think, but over time, it's not the answer. As you start to have those different dreams and ideas, write them down and just start thinking about them. Is that really what you want? Or is it just what maybe society has put in your head that you should have? Thinking about your bigger purpose. And I'm going to be honest here, trying to find your purpose is going to take, for many of us, a long time. Some people know, like right off the bat, when they're kids, what they want to do with their life. The rest of us, it might take us our whole life to figure it out. But until we start thinking about it and heading in that direction, we won't get there. So get your lottery ticket and figure out where you are today, what your skills are, what you enjoy doing, how you'd like to live a life when you have financial independence, and start dreaming. And over time, that will help you to start coming up with your purpose. Again, we're going to dig a lot more into this in our next episode. Next up is health. Now that you've got your sights on a great life and you've got financial independence, you probably want to be healthy because it really sucks to be rich when you're stuck in a wheelchair. You can barely breathe. If you've got the money to buy nice clothes and do fun things, don't you want to have a great body to enjoy it? One that's fit and in great condition that can take you through a long life and allow you to do the things that you want to do? There are things that are happening right now in science that may allow us to extend life considerably longer than we now live. And if they do come about, the reality is you better be in good enough shape to at least be able to benefit from all of that science and not be too far gone. Part of that is basic diet and exercise and going to the gym. I know it's dreaded, and there's a lot of bad information out in this particular area. What I have noticed is that as people age, they continue to get fatter and they continue to get weaker. And even though people do go to the gym or walk or they're on these dreaded diets, they don't seem to make any progress and they continually give up. Part of that is because we've been given the wrong information on the best way to diet and gain strength. Once I figured this out, after years of going backward, I was able to lose 50 pounds. And now I'm in the best shape of my life. The best part is I get to eat bacon and ice cream and enjoy a glass of wine. We'll dig into this in a later episode, and we'll talk about how you can enjoy life, enjoy food, enjoy your workouts, and get massive progress without a lot of effort. Creating a system for health and success and figuring out how your body works and the best way to work with it. If you're not getting the results you want now, it's time to do something different. It's time for a change. Next up is time. I know that many of us always say, we don't have time to do this, and we don't have time to learn, we don't have time to figure it all out. And that may be so, but the reality of the situation is everyone alive has the same 24 hours a day, the same 7 days a week, and the same 12 months a year. You have to figure out how to use your time wisely. Instead of watching TV, who, by the way, the sole purpose of that is to get you to watch commercials that make you feel like you need something more to be happy, which cause you to spend more money and go down that spiral again. We rarely watch TV anymore, and I don't miss it at all. 2 factors in time. The first thing is to take care of the big things first, the things that we have to do that are most important. A lot of times there are things that we don't want to do that are important. We spend half our day fussing over it instead of doing it, and that prevents us from doing so much more. The second thing is to understand the principle that 20% of what we do get us 80% of the results. That means if you can figure out how to spend 20% of your time extremely focused to get 80% of the results and what that 20% entails, and then focus another 20% of your time to get another 80% done. The reality is you've got about 96% of the results with only 40% of the effort, and that's pretty amazing. So how does that work? You have to create systems to get stuff done and get rid of things that either hold you back or prevent you from moving forward. We spend so much time procrastinating and fussing over things or doing things that aren't important instead of doing the things that might be hard, that we don't want to deal with quickly, but then if we did do them, we'd have the ability to do so much more. We're going to dig into this time a little bit further in one of our upcoming episodes and figure out how to get more time in your day so that you can do the things that you enjoy. The next 2 things have to do with mindset. And there's a lot more coming out recently with regards to mindset and psychology and how we behave. So 2 sides to this. The first one we're going to talk about is our internal mindsets, and then we'll shift to the external mindsets. So in life, we have so many rules and scripts that prevent us from doing what we want to achieve our goals. If you really think about it, most of our day is on autopilot. We just have habits and we follow them. When you wake up, do you think about brushing your teeth or showering, or do you just do it? Do you think about how you're going to work, or do you somehow just get there without thinking about it? Our habits and thoughts many times set, and we need to start changing those. The other thing that happens is we have certain scripts that hold us back. Scripts that say, I can't do this, or I will never be rich, or maybe that rich people are evil, or maybe there's certain cultural rules that we have to follow that make no sense but stop us from being successful. We spend the first 18 years of our life being told no more times than we can imagine by our parents and teachers. And now we get stuck in a box and we can't get out of it. It's time to change that. First is the fact that most people don't read or study once they leave school. Can you imagine going to a 60-year-old doctor who stopped learning when he got out of medical school? Would you really want to go to him because he's never learned any of the vast medical changes that have occurred over the last 30 years? What about you? Have you learned since you've left college? Do you know how to create a website? Do you know how to program your iPhone? What skills are you learning right now so that you can move forward every month? I read at least 2 books a month. I read and I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I take courses that help me grow. I know you can do it now, but just imagine, I know you think you can't do it now. I don't have time, or it's beyond my ability. But just imagine one 3-letter word that changes everything and that allows everything else to be possible. So, what are you saying? I can't exercise, I can't invest, I can't quit my job. Now just add one word to the end of that. Yet. And repeat the questions. I can't exercise yet. I can't invest yet. I can't quit my job yet. That shifts your mindset it opens the door and it allows you to figure out how to make those things happen. And once you open the door and you start imagining possibilities, it's amazing how fast they become possible. You have to learn to control your thoughts, your habits, and your mindset so that you are in tune to living a much more richer, happier life. Now, the next half of this and the next section around mindset is the external side, and that's rooted in psychology. There's a lot of things that are just designed in human evolution that prevent us from doing the things that we want to do. And psychology is finally catching up with how our mind works and why we behave the way we do. So even though we know we want to work out, we want to control our spending, we want to eat well, we want to make great investments, human nature cuts in and we do things that are not in our best interests. The reality is our bodies were designed for a life that has dramatically changed in the last 100 years and we haven't evolved. Advertising and shopping for fun didn't really exist in the 1800s. There was no TV. People worked to live, and the ability to get information and share it wasn't freely available. You followed your family's footsteps and you learned from your parents. Today's advertisers have figured out those triggers in our minds, and they know how to push just the right buttons to get you to desire that soda to feel good. We're only just starting to learn how self-control and happiness occur and why the things we think logically will work don't always do. The psychology of why we do the things we do is somewhat counterintuitive. It actually fascinates me, and I've spent a lot of time learning in this area. We're going to dig into this as well and weave it into our discussions as we go forward. The next thing up is the big picture, right? Financial. That's what it's all about. Having the ability to have the money to do the things we want. And no matter what it is that you want to do, you have to have a sound financial plan and actions that will help you to be able to say yes to what you want to do and no to what you don't. Imagine your employer saying, hey, times are tough. Be happy you have a job. And you say, no thanks, that won't make me happy. And neither will my resignation make you happy either. Have a nice day. Or imagine all those sports players and people in Hollywood making millions upon millions of dollars only to go bankrupt. I know you've heard the stories. A financial plan is nothing more than simple math. And it also brings about a concept that's very important, and that's the concept of compound interest. Compound interest is an amazing principle that drives across more than just money. And I'm going to try to explain it to you a couple of different ways. So first, let's kind of go with an imagination type of visualization of how this works. I want you to imagine a jet fighter taking off. And let's start right at the beginning point where it first turns onto the runway and it begins to start. Consider this your beginning too. Maybe it's when you're born or when you're a young child. And then imagine that jet fighter is going to go down that runway, it's going to take off, and it's going to soar straight up. The reality of the situation, it's a long way down that runway. And as it's going down that runway and it continues to gain speed and go faster and faster, it can be going over 100 miles an hour and still be on the ground. And many times that's what our lives are like. We go faster and faster, and yet we're still on the ground. We haven't taken off. But slowly, that plane hits a certain speed, and all of a sudden the nose goes up a little bit. And it starts to fly. And eventually, in no time, it's going straight up and soaring. That's kind of the way that compound interest works. Of course, if the plane runs out of gas on the runway, Or if the pilot aborts and never lifts off, well, then you don't get to soar. I guess the question for you is, how many times have you aborted something in your life because you didn't seem like you were getting off the ground or going as far as you wanted? So often, if we have one little failure, we give up and we don't continue. And if you don't do that, the power of compounding isn't going to work for you. So let's redo the story. This time, let's do it with actual money. Getting back to that lottery ticket, you win. So here's your choice. You're going to get $50,000 a day for 31 days. Or they have another offer for you. It's a little weird. They're going to give you a penny today, and every day they're going to double that penny for 31 days. Which one are you going to pick? The first example is pretty easy. You get $50,000 times 31 days, which is $1.5 million at the end of the month. Now on the other side, on day 1 you get a penny. On day 2, you get 2 pennies. On day 3, you get 4 pennies. On day 5, you get 8 pennies. At the end of the first week, you have a whopping $1.27. I guess that $50,000 a day sure sounds like a much better deal, doesn't it? At the end of 2 weeks, you've got about $20 to your name on the second plan, which again, you're probably thinking I made a stupid choice. At the end of 3 weeks, you have almost $21,000. Of course, you had $50,000 on the first day with the other plan. But here's the thing. At the end of 31 days, you end up with over $21 million. A dramatic shift from the $1.5 million you could have had. But here's the thing. Just 4 days earlier, on day 27, you still wouldn't have had the $1.5 million that you would have had with the previous plan. That's the power of compounding over time. And imagine now that you continue to compound your knowledge, learning a little bit more every day. You continue to compound your time, your health, your mental thoughts and controls. Where does that take you? Sure, it's a long journey. And it doesn't seem like you're going anywhere, but you're going faster and faster like that jet plane, and you're still on the ground. But yet, if you continue and you allow the magic of compounding interest to master your life and your money, you can end up with the $21 million that you could have at the end of 31 days. The opposite of this is debt. And debt works by the same rules in reverse. And that's why people who start to go into debt can very easily and quickly get crushed by that debt, because the compounding interest of the debt works under the same exact principles. It's no different. So, at the end of the day, this comes down to some very simple basics. And that is living a simpler life, living on less than you make, investing the difference wisely, and enjoying life. The compound interest curve and the story apply to everything. Your diet in the beginning doesn't seem to offer much success, but if you keep building momentum like the plane, you will fly and you will succeed in all these different areas of your life. But you have to keep going and you have to keep improving. The next area up is relationships. And again, remember, these are not in order. There's got to be balance of everything. Relationships are the people in our lives, our family, our friends, our spouses, our kids. Everyone's probably in a different place who's listening to this podcast. Some of you may have parents and siblings. Some of you might be married with kids. Some of you might be single and just starting out. Each segment of life offers different needs and desires. A single person, you might be looking for someone to date. Question I have for you: what are your criteria for the person that you wish to spend the rest of your life with? Have you thought about that? For those of you with kids, there's multiple stages of raising children. And on top of that, there's a host of time commitments and financial commitments. At each level, they're so different. When your kids are really young, under 5, you need to be responsible for them almost 24/7. As they grow, they go off to school. Your time frees up, your obligations go down a little bit. And then they start to hit 12, 13, and they become teenagers. They start to become independent, and they don't need you as much. And again, a whole different shift in what their financial and time needs are from you. And then off to college, in which case it's big checks and sayonara, Dad. Each stage has its own needs, its own requirements. One of the biggest takeaways, though, I want you to walk away with regards to kids is kids don't listen to what you say. They listen to what you do. What kind of role model are you? What are your goals for your family? How are you going to teach them about money? Remember, we talked about that earlier. A lot of your financial mindsets are created when you're between the ages of 5 and 12. What are you doing to create the mindsets for your kids? There's no money class in school. I know, I have an MBA. They never teach you about real personal finance beyond how to balance a checkbook. You need to figure it out for yourself. You also need to balance your time between your family and work or whatever other endeavors that you do. I've seen a lot of people spend their time at work and in search of wealth, and they ignore their kids, they ignore their family, and then they come to the reality that their kids don't care about them, they don't know them, and they don't want to be about them. Their spouse leaves them, and divorce is expensive. They take all the money, so everything you had been working hard for goes out the door. So figure out what stage you're in currently with relationships, build great friendships, be with your family, and figure out how that all fits into your bigger plan. The last area we're going to cover is spiritual. I'm going to leave this up to you to figure out how and which way you choose to pray or what religion or beliefs you want to hold on to. But being part of something bigger than ourselves really helps to put life in perspective, deal with the trials and the tribulations and also the joys. There's much wisdom that comes from so many of the different religious books, and there is much trouble that comes from man trying to determine or overcome what the universe has in store for us. Focus on that larger power and how you can receive the strength to achieve what you want in your life. One of my favorite quotes is, "Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words." We mentioned this before with kids. Your actions tell your story. Set your habits and let the world see you by what you do, not by what you say. This is especially important when the two are not in alignment. I have to say at this point, it's time to more than survive. It's time to thrive. We've touched on a lot of different areas today, and each of these go so much deeper, and I want to dig into each one of them with you and to go into more depth. Hopefully, we'll even be able to find people that we can interview and bring on the show that are far more knowledgeable than me in these different areas and can share their expertise with you. I also want to have deep conversations with you. If you're willing to spend a couple hours digging into your life and letting others hear our conversation, please reach out. No worries, we can change your name and keep the financial details private. Just email me and let me know that you'd like to be a guest on an episode and discuss your life and work on some of these different areas and see how it goes. Before we close out this session, I just want you to understand a little bit more about what I do and what my role is. I see it as a dual role. One part of my role is conductor, the one who stands in front of the orchestra. Too often in life, we have so many competing priorities across those 8 areas that we talked about today. Finding ways to keep them in harmony and make sure that one doesn't jump out and pull the others apart isn't always easy. Having someone to help you look over all these people, these pieces, and help you find balance is the job of the conductor. The second role is one of a Sherpa. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you're going to need a few Sherpas. These are the guides who know the way up to the top of the mountain. They've done it before. They know how to do it. They help you. They guide you. They bring you the information. The reality is, though, they aren't going to carry you up the mountain. You've got to do the work yourself. I'm just here to guide, to help you learn, and to show you a path. One last thing as we close out. At the end of the day, the toughest opponent you're ever going to face, the one who's going to do more to crush you, is yourself. We can't control or change other people, but we can control ourselves. We can control how we decide to do things. So it's up to you. Do something this week to make yourself better. Learn a new skill. Let go of some guilt or remorse that you might have. Read a book, change your mind on something, try a new route to work, start exercising. Try something different. In our next episode, we're going to dig into purpose. I'll leave you with this quote from Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Thanks for listening. Looking forward to our continued conversations.